I honestly would say the moment I got on that camera in my office and pushed through the fear and the awkwardness and said, it's not about if you like this or not. It's not about you. It's about making an impact and using the gifts you've been given and stewarding those in a way that's going to bless other people. So get over yourself and get on the camera and start talking about what you know, what you're passionate about.
Today's guest is Brett Swarts, a visionary entrepreneur and founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Brett has become a leading expert in helping high net worth entrepreneurs and investors defer massive capital gains taxes during big exits, whether it's from selling multi-million-dollar Bitcoin portfolios, commercial real estate, or thriving businesses. Drawing inspiration from both personal struggles during the 2008 financial crash and a deep calling to help others, Brett built his firm one cold call at a time, eventually going national with a hit podcast, best-selling book, and a transformative approach to wealth management. In this episode, Brett opens up about his journey from grueling 70-hour work weeks and setbacks to pivotal breakthroughs driven by grit, persistence, and heart. You'll hear real stories of clients whose lives and legacies were transformed with Brett Solutions, and discover how his philosophy of multiplying freedom and impact can apply to your own entrepreneurial dreams. Get ready for an inspiring conversation packed with actionable insights on resilience, purpose, and building a business that truly changes lives. As always, if you found value from this content, please like and subscribe. All right, Brett Swarts, welcome to Beyond Fulfillment.
Dave, grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking the time. So Brett, you run a highly specialized firm that helps entrepreneurs defer capital gains taxes when they're making large exits.
Correct.
That,
Yeah, we serve purpose-driven entrepreneurs and investors that are exiting, big Bitcoin businesses or real estate on the main ones, and they have huge capital gains tax. This is $1 million plus exits, and they're facing a massive capital gains tax bill, and they're looking for ways to defer it and compound the wealth.
okay. All right. So, and you've been in this business for quite a number of years. What was there an aha moment where you realized that, building this company was what you wanted to do?
Yeah, it was. It was during the more than one. It felt like a calling, Dave. And so it felt like a calling because it was during the 2008 crash that everything hit the fan financially, and a lot of things happened with a lot of my clients that I was serving at the time. And I was at Marcus and Millichap helping people buy and sell multifamily properties in Sacramento, California. And my dream was to be able to be an entrepreneur in real estate. And in real estate, it's 100% commission. And so I was basically sinking financially, but my clients were losing half or all of their wealth as well. And you get to a moment where you're like, do I really want to do this? Or am I supposed to be somewhere else? And the neat part about a crash like that is it clarifies quickly what your values are and maybe what your calling is. Because if you're still feeling pulled and called to serve those that are in this space, perhaps it's a good sign, and the money's not distracting you from that. And so it was like kind of a 2-year desert between 2000, call it late '07, really up to 2011. So more like a 3-year desert where I worked really hard to help people get out of these situations. And we found that the biggest problem was they were overpaying for properties in this, what was called a 1031 exchange. And that put them in a compromised position. And it wasn't just the finances and the tax, it was actually their family, their mission, vision, values for what they wanted to accomplish. It was coming crumbling down because they felt trapped by capital gains tax. And so here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, we exist to unlock capital gains to multiply freedom and impact. And there's a story about a gentleman named Steve who had $50 million of real estate, 2 sons, married, big house on the hill. I remember sitting down with him in early 2007 saying, hey, I think it's a good time to sell. He's like, but Brett, if I sell it, I don't have a great place to invest the funds. And even if I did, I'm probably going to overpay for it because the market's really hot still. And I have a lot of debt that I have to replace. And if I don't execute this in this tight time frame, I'm going to be hit with a huge tax. There's these rules you have to follow in the 1031. He goes, I'm going to just stay where I'm at. And he knew that was kind of not a great decision, but he kind of felt stuck. And at the time, we didn't have the solution for him, so we couldn't really argue, or really give him a good solution. Well, fast forward, he loses all of his wealth, 50 million of real estate, loses his marriage, and was bankrupt, lost his house. And I couldn't help but think when I was a kid growing up, my parents were divorced. And my brother and I couldn't spend time with my dad, who had built real estate and owned rentals and done all of the really cool things. And looking back and saying, if there's a way that can keep families together to multiply freedom and impact within this world of capital gains tax, man, I think we can change a lot of lives and help a lot of families. And so that was probably those 3 years was the defining moment of where I would be and where I'm now.
Okay. So you go through this process, and stories like that have a huge impact when you see the 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 lack of this solution and how detrimental that can be, right? So that impacts you. And like you said, this was a calling to basically create this solution for families to create impact and whatnot. So when you have that, you realize this is what you want to do and you're called to it. How did you go about building this company?
Yeah, I think it's one cold call at a time back in those days. And if there's a saying, Dave, you heard of this, that the prophet's not accepted in his hometown. And before this interview, you asked me, so are you like a CPA firm or what, are you CPA or, I'm like, well, actually I'm a trustee and I work with the CPA and a tax attorney to set these up and execute them. But I am the entrepreneur, real estate owner, right? Investor, broker. This is who I grew up, and so there's a saying that you're best positioned to serve the person you once were, and I couldn't help but see that what investors want is leverage, what they want is flexibility, and what they want is the ability to steward their wealth with their families in a way that keeps and maintains momentum. And so the the kind of the backing of like, okay, now I'm gonna start the company. I want to help these families. I feel called to this. Um, began to began to say, okay, let me cold call these people. Let me talk to them. And as a new entrepreneur, you got this idea and you think everyone's going to just jump on it. And so I'm calling these people, but they're like, who are you? You're just a real estate broker. You're just a real estate agent. You sell multifamily properties, and yeah, you know about 1031s, but I've never heard of that. Are you a CPA? Let me talk to my CPA. It seems like it's too good to be true. And and uh and so I kept calling and calling and calling, and every now and again I get a meeting, and I get a bigger meeting and a little bit bigger meeting, and all of a sudden I was finding myself in bigger meetings with billionaires and those that otherwise wouldn't have taken my call because I was actually offering something of value and that could solve their problem. And I found that as the pain of the '08 crash went on, it's like Mike Tyson says, like everyone's got a plan and everyone's got a solid plan until they get punched in the mouth or punched in the nose, right? Once they get into the ring, and that humbled a lot of people. And so I was there saying, look, if there was a way that we could have solved that pain and unlocked your dream, would you listen? Would you meet with me? And they said, sure. And so that was a little bit of momentum, but it wasn't until really I started a podcast, right? I wrote a book, right? I went national, and I stopped just trying to teach an old dog new tricks, if you will, right? To be fair, a lot of at that time, a lot of values were dropped by 20, 30, 40, 50%. So people didn't have a lot of gains. And so they were saying, call me back when you close some deals. Call me back when my properties are worth more. But I started to expand, like what we're doing right now, the microphone, right? And compound the communication effort. So the podcast really helped a lot. The YouTube channel helped a lot, and we went national versus just hyper local with one-on-one cold calling. I kind of went one to many with podcast.
Okay. All right. So as you're building it one cold call at a time, right? You're realizing that you're getting meetings, but it's tough to get results with that approach. And you realize that the leverage that the speaking one to many with the podcast, the YouTube channel, and all that has. As you're building this too, I mean, was there like discouragement too when you're making all these calls, and I'm sure you're working long hours, and you have these big ambitions like every entrepreneur does when they start out, but like the results just aren't there yet? Was it like, what was the mindset like in those early days?
Yeah, I call it the honey badger. If you ever look up the honey badger, it's one of the coolest animals to study and get a challenge. So, I I grew up playing sports, and I grew up very in a competitive world, basketball, played basketball in college and stuff, and football in high school. And you know, it's interesting because you go to college and you don't really know what you're going to do per se. Maybe some people do, and then you catch the internships, and then you fall in love with an industry like commercial real estate and investing and such, um, and then you're just in it, and all of a sudden you don't know the difference. I think one of the advantages of going and I graduated in May of 2007. Okay. So this is right before things really hit the fan. Like you don't have a baseline for what, I mean, it's the bottom of the barrel, right? It's like if you can make it in that world and learn in that world and persevere in that world, um, then it's probably you're pretty set to kind of persevere. So I had great coaches, great mentors, great people. My mom always inspired. My brother's first graduate college. I was the second on both sides of the family. My mom always inspired a belief in us that if we work very hard, if believe in the gifts that God's given us, well, we can make a big impact and we can achieve success, much success. And so I think a lot of that was kind of instilled into me, and I just kept going, and I also would see others that are achieving it, and I'd say if they can do it, I know I can do it, right? If they're doing it after so many years, you give me a few more years, I will figure out a way to be better or at least as good as they are. So, but yeah, it wasn't without the 70-hour weeks, working nights and weeks at Cheesecake Factory. Multiple. I did medical sales jobs in between these things as well. Driving 22,000 miles, moving with my brother to a small condo, having to borrow $5,000 from my dad because we literally went broke. We lost all of our money. We had no money left. We had loans. We had debt. All this stuff. And I remember I was working these nights and weeks at Cheesecake Factory, these AAU basketball tournaments. I was the hot dog doorman. I take the door. I was the bouncer. So I'd put the wristband on you, and then I'd sell you a hot dog. And my mindset was every single kid that walked through that door, there was $20 in his pocket. And he wanted to buy the Gatorade, the hot dog, and if I could sell it, I could make more money. It was down, but we were also serving. We're helping the university to be able to bring in more revenue through these AAU basketball tournaments. So yeah, I guess you could say hustling. I guess you could say I didn't matter. I was going to figure it out. By the way, I was still working at Marcus and Millichap this whole time. I was still doing the cold calls, right? I didn't just leave that. It's back during the seasons where I learned about all of this. So I would work, I call it 7 a.m. to about 4 or 5 p.m. every day, every Monday through Friday. And then I'd go to Cheesecake Factory about 5 o'clock, and I'd work till about 9 o'clock. I do that over and over and over again, probably 4 or 5 days a week, doubling up shifts, right? And I did that for 2 straight years. And so I would say that that's what you have to do. It's an and, it's not an or. It's not, oh, I got to give up on my dreams to go work this side to work this this job in order to potentially go back to my dream. It was like I'll do whatever it takes to do both. Now I had a big support from my wife, who was willing to move with my brother into a small condo, right? And then I got a break where we got to work at a medical sales job, and that got us a salary and benefits. But guess what? When I'm driving 22,000 miles to all these hospitals all over Southern Oregon and Northern California, I'm making calls to my real estate clients, right? And I'm checking in with them, and I'm seeing how they're doing. Like I didn't give up on the first dream. I'm talking about the DST. I'm talking about the deferred sales trust. I'm talking about tax. I'm still maintaining and building those relationships. Here's why. I told them not to sell a few years back. I said, don't sell. It's not a good time to sell if you don't have to. And now they're calling me when the market roars back, and they're like, hey, I'm ready to sell. I'm like, sweet. So then I found myself, working and being a top professional in the medical sales, and then also and getting these, call it now my side hustle in commercial real estate, selling these big, multi-million-dollar properties, getting these huge checks. And now I have this massive dual income, like this harvest season. So that's the answer. I mean, it was blood, sweat, tears. But it was also I was very fortunate to have a lot of people who supported me.
Okay. Wow. And that's appreciate you highlighting everything that it took to really get to where you are and some of those tough times. When you're going through that and you're literally working to a grueling schedule, right? 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., multiple jobs every day, right? With a wife and, very, like you said, living in a small condo. And it's just 2 straight years, right? When you're going through that, was there ever a point in time where you thought about like giving up on this dream?
Good question. I can't remember like a specific time. Um, I just, I knew, I think I've been given a gift of faith, believing where God wants me to be, believing in God, what He has for me, and trusting that process. So honestly, not really. I mean, I had a lot of fun at Cheesecake Factory. I had a lot of fun, at medical sales. Like it wasn't my calling, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I learned a lot. I learned, learned from one of the best real restaurants in the country. I think it's the number one restaurant in the country. I had great managers, great leaders. I learned how to, serve in hospitality and communicate. I mean, being a server is not easy, right? Medical sales, going into ORs, training nurses and respiratory therapists, learning about all kinds of different science. I also did veterinarian sales at one point. I would, have you seen The Pursuit of Happiness and Will Smith, and he's running out with those big boxes, right? He's trying to sell them. That was basically me. I had these big boxes, these chemistry hematology machines, and I'd go into these animal hospitals and I'd talk to the doctor to try to get him to sell, buy the box. And when he bought the box, they could do it's called real time care with these animals to be able to give them extra care for dogs and cats. So I had a blast doing it all. In other words, it was a privilege, not a sacrifice, to pay the price for my dreams. Right?
Mm.
It's an absolute privilege. I wouldn't change any of it. It taught me so much. It gave me so much grit and tenacity. It brought me and my wife closer together. I found that even though financially it was tough for those 2 years, and by the way, for those 2 years, I literally was making like zero and 5,000 in commercial real estate, and then and then there was no medical sales, there's no salaries, no benefits, and we had our first baby that came, and we could barely, we really even couldn't afford healthcare. We had to get healthcare through the state. So it was, I mean, it was literally nothing, right? Yeah, financially. But we were so rich in our marriage. We were so rich in like our commitment to each other. My brother was supporting us. My parents were there. We had local family. Like, so I mean, wealth, I think too often, if we let financial, monetary wealth and security be the foundation for what we're building, then you can quickly become poor, right? But when you have wealth of the human relationships, of the family, of the growth, man, I never felt poor, right? I know we were financially, on our backs, but I never felt poor. So I never thought about giving up. I mean, now I would have just figured out another way to get another job or another thing, but I did do medical sales and veterinarian sales. That was like a 5, 6 year term, right? So we're kind of covering a 2006 all the way to basically we're 2025. We launched our company technically in 2017, but I didn't go all in until about 2020. And now we've built it over, 150, $170 million under management. And we're helping all of these families. So the answer is, I don't think so, Dave. I really never thought about giving up. I just kind of kept going.
Okay. All right. And then talk about was there like a specific inflection point where things really started to take off after all this grit and hustle and blood, sweat, and tears over that many years?
Yeah, I was sitting in my home office in Roseville, California, and I think COVID is hit, and I remember thinking, okay, I'm about to get on. I need to get on camera. I need to make these videos, right? Oh my gosh, like I didn't want to be on a video. I was used to cold calling, meeting face to face. Now I'm getting on this video, and I'm starting this YouTube channel. I'll never forget. It's a dark room. I got my camera and I'm like talking to my phone. I'm like, this is just this is absurd. I just thought it was so absurd. I didn't want to do it. I'm like, and I just kept doing that. And then it helped when I started a podcast and I started interviewing other people because it took the pressure off of me just being the guy talking to the screen, right? And then I started going to other people's podcasts, and that landed me on the biggest stage in commercial real estate, one of the biggest stages for a conference. And that led me to meeting a group who's now a top strategic alliance and getting on their stage. And so I honestly would say the moment I got on that camera in my office and pushed through the fear and the awkwardness and said, it's not about if you like this or not, it's not about you. It's about making an impact and using the gifts you've been given and steward those in a way that's going to bless other people. So get over yourself and get on the camera and start talking about what you know, what you're passionate about. So that was the moment for sure. That led to all kinds of amazing things.
That's such great insights too, right? Because you hear that so often from people where maybe they have this spotlight effect type of thing, and they're just scared to get on camera. And then a lot of times too, that fear will just prevent people from doing those necessary actions. And I love that mindset too, where you take it's not about you, but it's really about stewarding your gifts and serving others and using your gifts to create an impact and having that help you push through the fear to just take the action. And then ultimately that was the catalyst for all this success that you've had. Is that right?
Spot on.
Okay. All right. And then talk about like the growth from there of the company and like some of the success stories and people that you've been able to help.
Yeah. And so we start to get people calling us from all over the country, right? About what we do and resonating with the stories and resonating with the transformation it can have for families. And eventually you get 10,000 hours in a subject and you've been studying it for over a decade and and you become really proficient at it. Let's just put it that way. And you start to see and understand how to solve complex wealth problems within the tax world. And so that was a huge piece of this, and the momentum starts to build, and then you start hiring, right? And then you start, you're building systems. So the systems, there's people, there's process, there's culture, there's core values. I think we have over 10 team members now, and we have team members international. We have team members in California, we have team members in Texas and Florida, and so that now you have to learn how to become a business owner. It's not just a one-to-one. It's a company. It's a business, and so that's a whole other part of growth, and hiring coaches for that, and understanding integrator versus leader versus the visionary, and delegation of time. And I mean, there's just so much. The entrepreneur journey is a journey of personal growth and tenacity, and it's going to test you in every which way. And yeah, so that's what I would say. And unfortunately, fast forward, my wife and I, we've been out 5 kids, and she's been full-time mom in the whole time, has not had to leave the kids at all, and she has spread her passion. We homeschool our kids, and you look back and you go, wow, it was all worth it. It was all worth it to be on this side. But that's the big thing. I think then you shift from like you being the hero to a client's being the hero. And so we'll interview people on our podcast, our clients, and really they are the heroes, right? And we're just the guide. And having that shift of mindset to, okay, we need to highlight their story, because as soon as we empower them with what we have, and they love the growth, they love the personal growth of this, because they're stepping out of their box. Because you see, these are real estate owners and business owners and Bitcoin owners that have been used to having unilateral 100% control of their world, right? And the tax man, if it wasn't for the tax man, they would stay in that state. But this gives them a chance to step out, trust a third party trustee, that's our role, to create a capital gains tax exit plan that allows them to defer all of this gain and then build a wealth plan that gives them what's called truly passive income. And so to wrap it up, it really becomes now about how that's changed their life, right? And this is the coolest part. So we got to the point where we serve these amazing families, amazing clients. They're like family. And now we get to share their stories and highlight them as the heroes. And then it just compounds, because a client testimonial is much stronger than anything that I could say on a podcast or on a video. When they say it and it transforms their life, like it gets a lot, it becomes really fun, because you're just sharing the transformation versus selling something that you offer.
Okay. All right. And Brett, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more what you do, about what you do, can you just speak to who you benefit and what's the best way people can reach out to you?
Yeah, you want to pick up the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. And you're wondering who needs to build that? Well, it's anyone that has a highly appreciated multi-million-dollar exit. It could be a business, it could be real estate, it could be a primary home, it could be Bitcoin, it could be stock, it could be a private jet, artwork, collectibles, cryptocurrency. You have multiple millions of dollars of gain and a big exit, and you're saying, hey, I want to be able to defer the capital gains tax, build and compound the wealth so I can multiply my freedom and impact without any charity, life insurance, or gifting required, no 1031 exchange required. time on your side. Like it's truly remarkable what it can do for you and your wealth plan. So you want to pick up the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, and you can do that by going to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And if you want to connect with me one-on-one, you go to brettswarts.com, BRETTSWARTS.com, and that'll have all of my LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and also access to the company Capital Gains Tax Solutions and the podcast Billions and Billions podcast as well.
Okay. And we'll link all that in the show notes for everyone. All right. Brett, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, sharing all this valuable wisdom from your journey with our listeners. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
All right.